Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Move America webinar, I apologize, Communicating for Contracts, Strategic Messaging. I'm sorry, we already have someone with their hand up. Strategic Messaging and Government Outreach. I'm Meg Pace. I'm part of the Strategic Communications team. I'm a Strategic Communications Specialist here at Move America, and I'm going to be your host today. Before we dive in, just a few housekeeping items. This session will run about 45 minutes, give or take, with Q&A. Please use the Q&A button at the top to submit your questions throughout the webinar. We'll do our best to address as many as we possibly can, and any we can't, we'll follow up with you afterwards. Now, I really am thrilled to announce today's speaker, despite the fact that I sound so nervous. My boss, Rico, he's Move America's Strategic Communications Director, and he brings over 30 years of experience guiding communication and marketing for organizations ranging from startups to multinationals to government agencies. Rick also, he holds a PhD in public communications and an MBA in marketing communications. He also hosts our Pathways to Partnership podcast and leads our monthly webinar series. Rick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Meg, thank you so much for having me. You know, I'm used to being on your side of the street as the host rather than the guest. So I'm hoping this is going to be a good one because people know I can talk. But no, it's going to be fantastic. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for jumping in and hosting today. Folks, I do promise to try to make government contracting communications at least 37% more entertaining than watching paint dry on a government building. Now, look, I know that's a low bar, but I'm really committed to clearing it. But before we get started, I love to give this spiel because I asked Meg if I could do this because we are coming to you today from Maryland, where Move America's headquarters is located. And that is a two-party consent state. What that means is that by participating in this webinar, you are effectively giving consent to be part of a recorded conversation. Now, here's the thing. Your microphone is muted, your camera is off, and your name is displaying however you have it, whether it's your actual name or it's mom's iPhone. It doesn't really matter. But just going to give you the opportunity right now. If you are uncomfortable being part of a recorded conversation, being part of a recorded event, a recorded webinar, please go ahead and jump off the line now. We promise you we'll still be friends. We'll make sure that you get the link to the video when it goes up on our YouTube channel later on, but we're going to give you the opportunity to jump off now. We always like to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, that's it. They're here. We're here. Thank you for sticking around. Meg, back to you.
All right, so let's jump in. What is strategic communications?
Yeah, I just skipped over a whole bunch of slides. I'm sorry about that. You know, we had the nice welcome and housekeeping. So I forgot totally what I was doing. See, I'm not used to being on this side of the street. Yeah, so that's me. Blah, blah, blah. Here's our agenda for today. Obviously, we're going to go through what is strategic communications. We're going to set the stage, go over some key focus areas for business, outreach strategies, yada, yada, yada. You'll see. We'll get there. All right. So what is strategic communications, especially when you're talking about in the context of government contracting? You know, it's kind of like being a really good GPS for your message, Meg. You wouldn't just throw your message in a car and hope that it's fine, hope that it finds its destination, right? It's all about getting that message in the right context, the right message to the right people through the right channels at the right time, and then actually checking to see if you've arrived where you wanted to go. So specifically, when you talk about strategic communications, it's a very specialized approach for distributing and receiving information that focuses on 5 key elements. So I want you to think of these as your communication ingredients, or like the infinity stones of messaging, but it's less likely to destroy half the universe with one snap of your fingers.
Okay, so what are these 5 elements? Let's
All
talk
right.
about them.
So first one you've got is your objective, right? What's your intended outcome? Are you trying to win a contract? Are you trying to build brand awareness? Because let me tell you something, without that brand awareness, you're not going to win a contract. Are you trying to get invited to bid? Are you hoping that somebody invites you to the dance? You need to know where you're going before you start the journey. All right. And then your second, and I'm going to jump right into the second, your second is audience insight. Who matters? What do they care about? Why is this critical? Because in government contracting, your audience at the local level is very different from your federal audience, and state is a whole other animal as well. So here's what I'm going to say. And some of you are going to get this analogy and some of you aren't. And those who aren't, you can just hit Google and YouTube. It's like knowing whether you're talking to a fan of Star Wars or a fan of Star Trek. They both love space, but if you mix up your references, it's going to get ugly and you're not going to get your message across.
That is actually a perfect segue. Can you explain the difference between stakeholders and shareholders? I know that this is often a point of confusion.
Yeah, it really is. And it's important to understand who is who, because one can be a subset of the other, but not the other way around. So stakeholders are anyone who's impacted by your company's decisions, whether or not they own any part of the company. So you think of these as your employees, your customers, members of the community, government agencies you're trying to work with, prime contractors, anybody you're trying to network with. They can be stakeholders. They're impacted by your company's decisions. Shareholders, on the other hand, these are the folks who actually own part of your business. So here's what you have to remember. Shareholders are always stakeholders, but stakeholders are not always shareholders. Like, do you remember geometry class where they used to say all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares? No, I'm the only one. Okay, well, moving on. They changed math anyway, so it's all new math, and I don't understand any of it, but we'll just
I,
go from there.
I think we've got an idea. So what's the third element?
Your third element is message and narrative, okay? Because you have to understand what you say and how it goes up the rungs of the ladder to your strategy. That's really important. Now, this includes everything from your organizational messaging, because you've got to position yourself as an organization, both internally and externally. And those can be separate messages. Trust me, you need to align that messaging to specific agencies, to components, to contracts, or to, again, if you're trying to talk to somebody who wants to join your company as an employee, you're not going to tell them the exact same thing that you're going to tell someone that you want to hire you. It's two very different messages. You're not changing who you are. It's not about changing that message. It's about framing the message. You're emphasizing different aspects of your capabilities, and then that, what you're putting into that frame really depends on the audience. And then, when you're looking at it some more, you've got the fourth one, which is channels and timing. This is when and where you deliver your message. Are we talking about a capability statement, which a lot of companies don't realize they need? You need a capability statement. You need to show in one page what it is that you can do, how you can do it, what contract vehicles you can use. Is it a LinkedIn post? Because those are really important. Social media is such a big part of our strategy these days when it comes to communicating, because LinkedIn is something that can either raise you up or sink you quicker than the Titanic, with the folks trying to grab onto a board. I'm still pretty sure that Rose knew that Jack could have come up on that board next to her, but she just, she didn't go there. But I'm not going to debate that one. Are you going to do a presentation at an industry day? Industry days are huge. We just had one here in our area, with what was it, APC and AGC, ACG?
ACC, APG. So,
ACC, APG, yes.
mhm.
And so, we had that industry day where you had to talk about who you were, and again, what can you do? Every medium that you're going to use has its purpose. And yes, I'm talking about medium is singular, media is plural. and media is biased depending on who you're talking to. Medium, you got to understand. I'm a recovering journalist. I spent years in journalism, so I'm really particular about that. But again, it's the medium. Every medium has to be different. Let me just tell you, as somebody who is a smaller or larger mammal these days, but was a larger mammal, the one size fits all approach doesn't work.
That is absolutely true. And so let's go into the fifth element, execution and coordination.
Yeah. I mean, these tactics are the specific actions that are going to bring your strategy to life. Okay. Again, what are you going to use? It might be digital media. It might be social media. It might be email. It might be webinars like this one. It could be podcasts like the one that we host and we bring to you twice a month. Little shameless plug in there. Networking events. We love to hold those networking events. All of those are coordinated to support your overall strategy. So again, I love to talk in analogies and throw some metaphors and a few dad jokes in. But you got to remember, your strategy is the river, and your tactics are the currents in that river. So you need to flow with them. Each channel, whether it's digital, whether it's social, whether it's events, it flows with its own force in its own direction. Sometimes it's this nice, gentle current. Sometimes you're going through the rapids. But they're all moving toward the same area, right? They're all moving to the same end. When the currents work in concert rather than against each other, you create momentum. And that's far more powerful than any single stream could generate on its own. But again, you've got to keep them moving toward the same point.
That is a comprehensive framework. So essentially, strategic communications is about being intentional and systematic in how you communicate rather than just putting information out there and hoping for the best, like throwing spaghetti to see if it sticks.
Oh yeah. And love that analogy, Meg. Spaghetti
Yeah.
at the wall, which we shouldn't do in these days because inflation. A box of spaghetti used to be like $1, now it's like 10. But it is, and I never really understood why you would throw it at the wall, but I get where they're going because some of it sticks and the rest of it goes on the floor and the dog eats it. You gotta understand, it's especially crucial in government contracting because you are competing against many other businesses. They are all trying to get the same piece of the pie that you're trying to get because that pie is only so big. Decision makers are often risk averse. We don't like risk when you're making decisions, especially in business, because those risky decisions, they could end up sinking you really quickly. So you need to make it as easy as possible for someone to say yes to you, the quickest path to yes. And that starts with clear and consistent and strategic messaging.
So let's set the stage a bit. Rick, why should businesses even consider government contracting in the first place?
Well, Meg, I'm really glad you asked that. And it's quite frankly because government contracting is like finding out there's a secret level in your favorite video game that's been there the whole time. And it's actually the easiest level with the best rewards. You got to remember, governments are the largest customer ever at every level, federal, state, and local. We are talking billions upon billions upon billions of dollars in contracts every single year. These opportunities span nearly every industry you can imagine: construction, IT, professional services, facilities management, logistics, healthcare, you name it, it's there.
So what makes government contracts particularly attractive if you're comparing it to private sector work?
Really, it's three words: stability, scale, and set asides. And don't tell me that last one was two words that's put together into a phrase, because then I'll just start getting into a grammar battle with you, and we don't want to do that. Again, you got to understand, government contracts offer stability because governments operate on predictable budget cycles, not on quarterly whims. Once you're in, there are opportunities for growth throughout contract renewals, expansion of contracts, and new opportunities. Plus, you've got billions in set asides that are specifically for small and medium enterprises, right? The government actively prioritizes working with small and medium sized businesses and has established programs specifically designed to create those opportunities. Now, again, that ebbs and flows because sometimes you get some that, you get some programs that today they're really popular, next administration they're not really popular, and then they go back to being popular again. But again, they're always going to be there, whether they're called something different, whether they have a different focus. The government recognizes that innovation lies in small and medium-sized businesses, and they know that it's going to take some doing to get that innovation out of these small and medium-sized businesses because they're not set up the way that they necessarily should be in order to give that information over and put that into the defense sector or the government sector.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, it sounds like it could be something that really intimidates businesses, especially if it's their first time. It might be intimidating.
Oh, big
Going
time.
into federal contracting or any local, state as well.
Yeah, no, big time. That's totally fair to say because, when you're talking any type of government contracting, whether it's federal, whether it's state, whether it's local, it can feel like you're trying to read the instruction manual for IKEA furniture, except it's in a language you don't speak. There are 47 appendices and all of the parts are all labeled A. But let me just say, there's good news, okay? You don't have to start at the federal level. State and local governments are often really great entry points, and they're not as intimidating. They have a lot less bureaucracy. They have shorter procurement cycles, and the relationships you build there can really help you understand the government contracting landscape before you start stepping up to federal work. So again, if you're going back to my analogy of thinking of it like a video game, you don't start on expert mode. You build all your skills at the lower levels first. You go and take out a bunch of the lower level drones before you start moving up to the boss level.
That's really helpful context. So there are real opportunities here for businesses of all sizes and all experience levels.
Oh, absolutely. Again, you got to remember the key is understanding how to communicate your value in a way that resonates with government buyers, which conveniently is exactly what we're talking about today. Amazing how we do that, right?
Well, let's get into specifics. So what should businesses focus on when they're preparing to pursue a government contract?
Again, great question, because at any government contract level, the key is to present yourself and your business as a credible, low risk, and capable partner. And you have to do all three of those because two of the three are not going to work. Government buyers, again, we talked about the decision makers being risk averse. Government buyers are incredibly and inherently risk averse. They're spending money that isn't theirs. They're spending money that's the taxpayers, and nobody wants to be the person who picked the contractor that failed spectacularly. So your job as a business is to make them feel confident in choosing you. And we've got 5 core areas to focus on across all levels of government contracting, whether it's state, whether it's local, whether it's federal.
Well, let's go through them. What's first?
Yeah. So,
let's dive in.
Let's dive in. It's up on the screen. First is past performance, right? This is really huge. Government buyers love past performance because it's evidence that you can actually do what you say you can do. But here's the catch. If all your experience is in the private sector, you need to translate that work into government relevant language. So for example, you wouldn't just say managed IT infrastructure for Fortune 500 client. That's really great for a resume, but it's not great for a capability statement. Instead, you want to say managed secure, compliant IT infrastructure supporting 5,000 plus users across multiple locations with 99.9% uptime. See, what you're doing there is you're taking that and you're expanding it out. And you are painting a picture of reliability. You're painting a picture of scalability. And you're painting a picture of security. Those are things that government buyers, they dream about. And sometimes it's good dreams and sometimes it's nightmares, but they deeply care about it.
So it's not just inventing experiences that you don't have, but almost reframing in some ways what you've done uh, so that it now resonates with government buyers.
Exactly. Because again, you got to realize you never want to overpromise and underdeliver. There are a lot of companies, there are a lot of businesses that will sit there and say, oh, yeah, we could do that. We haven't done it for anybody, but we could do that. I can dig a hole in the parking lot. It's going to take me a whole lot longer than somebody who actually knows how to dig a hole in a parking lot and has the right equipment. So you got to realize you can't be doing something like that. It's kind of like when you update your resume for a specific job, which again, hoping I do a good job being the guest on this webinar so I don't have to do that. You don't want to lie. You don't want to embellish. What you simply want to do is you want to emphasize the relevant parts of your experience. You wouldn't list your expertise in karaoke on a cybersecurity proposal. Well, let me just say you could, but I don't know that I recommend it because they don't sing a lot of karaoke at cybersecurity conferences.
That is very much a fair point. What is the second focus area?
Well, that's capacity, okay? Because you need to show that you can scale and you can deliver reliably. You got to remember, government contracts can be really large and complex, right? Agencies want to know that you have the people, the processes, the systems, and the financial resources to handle the work. And you need to remember something. We always tell people this at every time we talk to them about these types of things. You need to understand that you don't get a government contract and then you get a nice big fat check so that you can ramp up. It doesn't work that way. You get to give the product or service first, and then you get the money. So you need to make sure that you are ready for that. But you need to make sure that when you're talking about your team's qualifications, your infrastructure, your quality control processes, your ability to handle challenges, you need to show that you've got a really, really, really deep organization as far as the government is concerned. It's kind of like in basketball, right? Or even in football. Your star player is out. You've got to have capable people ready to step in and ready to take over the workload.
Absolutely. Very fair. And so let's go into the third area, compliance.
Yeah. When you're talking about compliance readiness, this is there where things get really interesting because you got to remember each level of government has its own unique rules. At the federal level, you're dealing with the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation. And FARs scare people. If you're working with defense, then it becomes DFARs because you have to add the defense FAR supplement. You might need to comply with CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, which I talk a lot about with our partner organization, Project Spectrum. You've got levels 1 through 3 there, or you've got NIST 800-171, and some people are going to be looking at me like I just shot a fact at them in the matrix. It's going to go right about here. But you got to understand these things. Now, at the state and local levels, you're dealing completely with different procurement regulations that vary by jurisdiction. Yeah, it's kind of like how every state has different rules for fireworks. Some let you go wild and they have a bunch of people running around with 3 fingers on one hand. Others are super restrictive and they have all their digits. You need to know which is which because you never want to be the person who goes into a state that doesn't sell fireworks and try to buy fireworks because then all of a sudden law enforcement becomes involved and it's never a good thing. You're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Regular vernacular in this time.
That sounds extremely complex. So how should a business approach this head on?
Yeah. I mean, the thing you need to do is you need to start by understanding the compliance requirements for each specific opportunity that you're pursuing. And they're going to be there, okay? It's going to be right in the RFP. It's going to be right in the RFI. It's all going to tell you what you're going to need to do in order to pursue the contract. And one of the biggest mistakes that companies make is they try to become compliant with everything at once. You know, that's a really great movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, but not a great strategy when you're trying to conquer like cybersecurity. It's overwhelming and it's expensive. What you need to do is you need to focus on what you need for the contracts you're actually targeting. And then you want to get help, right? Because you've got the Apex accelerators, which Move America has our Apex accelerator in Dearborn, Michigan. These are what's formerly known as the PTACs, right? The Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. I can see why they changed to Apex accelerators because it's a much catchier name, but they can guide you through this. These are free resources, free to you, not free to you, that are specifically designed to help small and medium-sized businesses navigate through that government contracting maze.
Awesome information to know. What is our fourth focus area?
You know, that's certifications, because you got to remember at the federal level, certifications, you're talking about programs like 8A or HubZone or woman-owned small business and service disabled veteran-owned small business. That's a lot of acronyms that you got to really throw out there. And the government loves its acronyms. My goodness, it's like they take a box of alphabets and throw it on a table and say, all right, that's what our next program's called. At the state and local levels, you have things like minority and women business enterprise certifications, or disadvantaged business enterprise, or small business enterprise. You've got a whole bunch of others, okay? These are certifications that close doors and open doors. You need to remember that. If it's saying that you need to be a woman-owned small business in order to qualify for this contract, you can't just go out and suddenly give 51% of your company to your grandmother. It's not a good thing. You want to make sure that you understand that those are being limited for a reason. They're being limited so that they open the doors to one of those contracts that have those set aside requirements. So if you understand that some contracts are only open to businesses with specific certifications, then you're going to get along just fine. It's like having that VIP pass. It gets you into rooms that otherwise you couldn't access. You get to go backstage, do the grip and grin with the star, and maybe even you get like the free box of popcorn when they're showing you the movie premiere. But again, it's about closing those doors for some, but opening them for others so that they can compete.
That makes total sense. And should businesses pursue these if they're eligible, all businesses?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And here's what you need to do. You need to figure out, if you don't qualify right now, you need to find out what you can do to qualify to get certified. Because sometimes there are different ways about that, right? I know some contracts where, again, it was only open to a certain type of contractor. But that contractor, like a woman-owned small business, but the woman-owned small business didn't have the expertise that another company did. Well, guess what? They teamed up and they formed a joint venture, and then they were able to bid on the contract. They were able to win that. But that process is going to take time, getting certified or finding good teaming partners. That can sometimes take months, if not longer. So what you want to do is start early. Don't wait until you find the perfect opportunity to begin the certification process, because certification for those things, it's the foundation you pour before you build. Without it in place, you're not construction ready, no matter how good the blueprints are.
That is extremely, extremely true. And moving into the fifth focus, financial stability.
Yeah, because again, that's all about risk, right? Agencies want these low risk partners. And that means companies that are financially solid. Now, there's some things you're going to have to provide here. You might need to provide financial statements. You might need to show that you're bonded. You might need to show that you have proof of adequate insurance. There was always this thing back when I used to work in the financial sector. They said you always kept 3 sets of books. You kept the books for the investors, for the tax collectors, and for the divorce attorneys. But you need to have that one set of books that you want to show, that's really going to show, hey, this is somebody that we could trust. You don't need to be a Fortune 500 company. actually far from it. You just need to demonstrate financial responsibility, and you need to show that you have the resources to deliver on your promises. If you're saying that you're going to deliver, 10,000 widgets to, the Department of Labor, you got to deliver those 10,000 widgets. But if you only have enough money to purchase, 2,000 of the components that you need to make the widgets, then they're not going to give you the contract. You got to remember, you got to be able to deliver. It's like being a responsible adult who pays their bills on time. It's not glamorous, but it's essential, and you got to keep that credit rating up.
That's a very fair point. So in pulling this all together, businesses really need to present a complete picture of reliability and capability along with those potential proposals.
Yeah, no, definitely, because you got to remember, it's, think of it as building trust, right? Every element we've discussed so far, past performance, capacity, compliance, certifications, financial stability, these are all building blocks of trust. Government buyers, no matter what level, they need to know that they can trust you to deliver on time, within budget, without drama. Drama, bad. Just keep that in mind. Your communications need to consistently reinforce that message and build that trust at every single touch point.
So let's head on over to outreach strategies, and we're going to talk about reaching out to government buyers. So what outreach strategies should businesses be using?
Yeah, this is really where the rubber meets the road, because you've got the capabilities, and they could be the best in the world, but if nobody knows about you, you're a tree falling in an empty forest. You might make a sound, but nobody's around to hear it. Outreach strategies vary by level of government. So let's go ahead and break it down. You want to start with the first one?
Yeah, let's start with local government contracting.
Yeah, let's be, and here's what I'm going to say. I'm glad that you chose local first, because again, you want to try to work your way up, right? At the local level, relationships matter most. This is where you want to attend city and county vendor fairs, connect directly with procurement officers. You want to join local chambers of commerce. Local government, often the most accessible because it's smaller, it's less bureaucratic. You might have one person making a decision, or just a small team. So think of it like networking in your hometown. You show up to events, you introduce yourself, you're helpful, you build some genuine relationships. You don't just show up when you want something. That's the equivalent of being the friend who only calls when they need help moving. It's really not a good look.
Sorry about that. And what about state contracting?
So this is kind of a step up in formality, but it's still very relationship driven. Okay. You want to attend those industry days that we talked about and the pre-bid conferences. These are the events where the government explains what their upcoming projects are, what they're looking for. It's kind of like getting those test questions before the exam, except this is completely legal and it's actually encouraged. They want to give you this information. You can also leverage state supplier portals. You're really not going to have those at the local level a lot of times. Most states have online systems where they post opportunities and where you can go and register as a vendor. Once you get in those systems and you set up alerts and actively monitor them, oh man, you start seeing those opportunities pouring in.
So after hearing local and state, I can only assume federal contracting, probably the most complex.
Definitely more structured, but I have to say, along with that complexity comes great opportunity, because there are great resources. Federal level matchmaking events are often fantastic. These are events where small and medium businesses can meet directly with prime contractors and agency representatives. It's kind of like speed dating for government contracting, except instead of finding romance, you find contract opportunities, which is even better because romance drains you of money and contract opportunities can give you money. So it's really not the same thing. But again, you want to use your Apex Accelerator. Free resources funded by the Department of Defense and the Small Business Association. They are here to help the small and medium businesses. They offer training, they offer one-on-one counseling, connections to opportunities. And again, especially if you're in the Dearborn, Michigan area, we've got one that we could recommend. You also want to make sure that you're connecting with those small business liaison officers that are at the different federal agencies. And believe me, they have them. Every federal agency, as long as they're still running, and we're going to hope that that happens, fingers crossed, has someone whose job is specifically to help small and medium businesses access contracting opportunities. So please make sure that you use them.
So one thing you've mentioned is prime contractors. So
Yeah.
can you explain that relationship?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a great question to ask because a lot of people don't understand what prime contractors really are. They think prime contractors are always really, 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 really big companies that win big government contracts, and then they bring a few other folks along to the party just to, to try to take advantage of those. That's not really it. You got to understand, prime contractors often are those larger entities, right? But a smaller company could still be a prime if they have the expertise and they bring someone in who, again, can help them meet other qualifications, can help them meet other, other parts of the contract. So, think about what I said before about the woman-owned small business. Who then brought on the other company that wasn't, because combined they had all the expertise. One of them was the prime, one of them was the sub. So, the easiest way for a small and medium business to break into government contracting is to work with a prime, especially at the federal level. Now, what this entails is building relationships with primes in your industry. You need to let them know what you can do, what certifications you have, what makes you reliable. When they need a subcontractor with your capabilities, you're going to be top of mind if you get in there. So it's like being on their speed dial. One of the great ways to do this, and Meg, you and I know this very well firsthand from our work with the Department of Defense Mentor Protege program. You get into the Mentor Protege program, you get a mentor, which is a large prime that is going to mentor you, a smaller business, and they're going to help you because they're more experienced in that whole government contracting arena. So again, want to make sure that you take advantage of things like that. And again, if you want to know more about the Mentor Protege program, we know your hookup. We've got a place for you to get that information. It's right here at Move America. But, I would be really remiss if I didn't mention that.
And what about having a digital presence? How important is that to a business?
I got to say, I'm so glad you asked that because digital presence is crucial. Your website, your LinkedIn profile, you need to be aligned to what it is that you're trying to do, especially if you're trying to get into government contracting. You need to have a clear description of your capabilities. You need to have specific experience to relevant government work. Your certifications, NAICS codes, you need to have those prominently displayed, your past performance examples. And you need to make sure that you utilize a professional design that signals competence. If your website looks like a blog from the mid 2000s, it's not going to show a professional presence. It's your digital storefront. If someone walks by and sees chaos and disorganization or something really, really bare bones that, their 7-year-old could have built in the beginning coding class, they're not coming in. If they see something clean and professional and well organized that clearly communicates value, they're going to be interested. And let me just say, if you think nobody's going to go see my website, you're wrong. Government buyers absolutely Google you before they decide to work with you. Google, ChatGPT, whatever it is that they're going to use, they're going to find you, and your digital presence is going to be the first impression you make. I guarantee it. So you want to make sure it's a good one.
Absolutely. And just to kind of add on to that, I also recommend that you Google yourself and see what comes up.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. Just to pass along some wisdom.
Yeah, no, I mean,
So
because you don't want that to come as a surprise, right?
exactly. It's a multi-channel approach between in-person networking, digital presence, and then leveraging your support organizations.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. You got to remember, none of these strategies work in isolation, right? You need to have that integrated approach. All your tactics are supporting each other. In-person networking leads to people finding your website. Your LinkedIn posts keep you visible between face-to-face meetings. Your capability statement ties it all together with a clear, concise summary of your value. Remember, think of it kind of like an ecosystem. Each element feeds the others. Your networking creates awareness that your digital presence sustains, while your materials convert interest into action. And then you can remove any one component and the whole system weakens. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep them all strong. So let's go ahead and talk about tailoring messaging for different audiences, because, something that businesses struggle with. And Meg, you and I have seen this a lot when we've talked to different folks and we've had different things going on, right? How do you adapt your messaging for different audiences without seeming inconsistent or inauthentic? So there's a key principle. The message shifts, but the company identity needs to stay the same, right? Think of it like being a person in different contexts. You're the same person, whether you're at a job interview or you're at your grandmother's birthday party or you're at a concert or you're at a Super Bowl party, but you adjust your tone, your emphasis, your language. You would use language in front of your grandmother that you would use when you're talking about the Super Bowl, especially if your team is losing. You got to remember what you talk about is based on the context. You don't suddenly become a different person. It's not like you have different personalities. You're just emphasizing and de-emphasizing different aspects of who you are.
Awesome. So let's break this down by level. What should businesses emphasize for local contracting?
When you're talking local, you want to make sure you're emphasizing community impact. You want to make sure, how does your work benefit the local community? How responsive are you? Can you show up quickly when you're needed? How cost effective can you be? Are you providing good value for those taxpayer dollars, especially on the local level, because they are a lot less prevalent and a lot less abundant than the federal dollars? And local presence. Are you part of the community, or are you an outsider swooping in? Local government buyers want partners who care about the community and understand local needs. It's not just about getting the job done. It's about being a good neighbor.
And that absolutely makes sense. So what changes when you're communicating from local to state government agencies?
Yeah, when you're talking about state, you're talking about scalability, because again, those projects are larger. So can you handle work across multiple counties or regions within the state? Regulatory compliance. Do you understand their state specific regulations and requirements? And then the economic impact, because it's broader, right? It's no longer just this little area. It's a much bigger area made of a lot of little areas. How does working with you support state economic goals like job creation, right? State buyers think bigger than local, but more specifically than federal. So they care about serving the entire state effectively while meeting state-specific priorities and regulations.
And federal contracting, what's the emphasis there?
It's all about, there's 3 C's. You've got compliance, capacity, and certifications. So compliance, again, are you going with the FAR, the DFARs, the CMMC? What is relevant? It's going to be stated in the contract or in the RFP. Your capacity, again, can you scale to serve multiple locations, possibly worldwide? Because you got to remember, the federal government doesn't just do business here. We do business everywhere. And then certifications. What set aside categories do you qualify for to make sure that you go after those contract opportunities or stay away from those contract opportunities if you're not supposed to be in that room? You don't want the bouncer to throw you out. Then you got risk management. How do you ensure security, quality, reliability? Federal buyers are thinking about all these complex requirements. It's about very strict oversight and often national or even global scope. Your messaging needs to convey that you can handle that level of complexity and scrutiny.
Could you give us an example of how the same capability might be messaged differently?
Yeah, sure. So say you're a cybersecurity company. Again, I know a lot about cybersecurity from working with Project Spectrum. Here's how you might position yourself. If you're local, it's all about, hey, we can protect government systems on the city level from cyber threats and make sure that the residents' personal information stays secure and city services remain available 24/7. As you know, we're local, so we're here when you need us. We're in the same time zone, we're in the same community, right? if that same company for a state contract would say, look, we can provide comprehensive cybersecurity solutions for state agencies across all of the counties, whether there's 6 or 67. We can meet those state-specific compliance requirements while enabling secure data sharing between agencies. Our work supports the state's digital transformation goals while protecting citizen data. So there's some common elements there, but a lot of it is just, again, shifting that focus and framing it differently. Then you've got the federal. We deliver enterprise security solutions compliant with whatever the federal regulations are, whether it's CMMC or it's NIST 800-171. We've got experience securing federal systems that handle sensitive but unclassified information. There's a really great course on Project Spectrum about what's federal contract information versus what's controlled unclassified information. I do recommend that one. Our team holds active security clearances and has successfully supported federal civilian and intelligence community missions. Again, same company, same core capabilities, but your emphasis and language shift based on what the particular audience cares about the most.
That's really helpful. So what's the biggest, or what are the biggest mistakes that businesses make when trying to tailor a message from one to another?
I'd say the biggest mistake they make is just going too far. They try to position themselves as an expert in everything to everyone. I always tell people the same joke. I only know 2 people in the world that know or believe that they know everything about everything. One gave birth to me, one married me. Neither one of them is right. If you claim to be equally experienced in local park maintenance and classified defense systems, people are going to question that. That's going to be hit to your credibility because they're really not the same thing. You can't say you're a great brain surgeon and great pastry chef. Technically, both could be true, but most people are going to assume you're probably not amazing at both. And, again, if you mess up something with the pastry, it just means you don't eat it. You mess up something with brain surgery, it's a little longer lasting effects. So you want to be authentic about your experience level. If you're new to federal contracting, but you've been nothing but private sector and it's great private sector experience, great. Just say that. Don't say, oh yeah, we did federal. No, you did private sector. You frame it as bringing a fresh perspective and proven commercial capabilities to the government space. It's all about being honest. Honesty builds trust. If you overpromise and underdeliver, you destroy that trust. You don't get contracts.
And that makes 100% sense. So let's move over to branding and brand consistency. How do businesses maintain a consistent brand while tailoring their messaging?
Brand consistency really needs to be the glue that holds everything together, right? Your core story, your mission, your values, and expertise, they all should be consistent across all audiences. Again, what changes is the emphasis, not the fundamentals. So think of your brand like a prism. White light goes in, different colors come out depending on the angle. The light itself hasn't changed. You're just revealing different aspects of it. So what you're doing with your brand when you tailor your messaging, that really needs to stay very consistent so people don't think that, again, you are different companies when you're not.
And of the branding elements, which are probably the most important to remain consistent?
First, you want to make sure it's your mission and your values, why your company exists, what principles guide your work. That shouldn't change based on who you're talking to, right? Then you've got your visual identity, your logos, your colors, your fonts, your overall design aesthetic. These should always be consistent. When someone sees your capability statement, your website, your LinkedIn profile, they should recognize it's all the same company. If you got different logos and different graphics and different typefaces, then it gets confusing. Your tone of voice always needs to stay consistent. It can flex slightly, okay? It might be a little more formal with federal agencies, a little more casual with local, but the underlying personality should always be recognizable. Fourth needs to be your proof points, your specific projects and achievements that you highlight. They can vary, but don't contradict yourself. Don't claim 50 years experience in one document and 5 years in another, because math just doesn't work that way. Ask the IRS.
You could just ask me. Either works.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, no,
Meg
actually,
math
no,
expert.
no. That really is a joke, everyone. So earlier, you mentioned the importance of not positioning yourself as an expert in only one area and then positioning yourself as a novice in another. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. And great follow-up question. This is crucial because, again, your positioning always needs to be honest and consistent. If you're experienced in state contracting but new to federal, just own that. Don't pretend to have deep federal experience that you don't have, because it becomes obvious very quickly and you damage your credibility. Frame your newness as an advantage where it's appropriate. We're bringing proven state level success and commercial best practices to the federal marketplace. It's honest, positions you and your experience as relevant. Doesn't have to be federal experience if it will impact the federal space. Remember, your reputation is your currency in this market, and if it's inconsistent, it devalues fast. Government contracting, as big and daunting as it seems, is a small world. And those agencies, they talk to each other. They meet each other for lunch. Evaluators move between departments, they move between agencies. Those contradictory claims, they don't just raise flags, they close doors permanently, so don't make them.
Yeah, I think we've all learned or heard about that as a lesson in various contexts. What about design consistency? How important is that really?
It's a lot more important than people think, right? Because when you're talking about design consistency, it signals professionalism and it signals attention to detail and it shows a mature organization. When your materials all look cohesive, it subconsciously communicates that you have your act together. If every document looks like it was made by a different company because it's in a different font on a different letterhead, it really just suggests disorganization, that lack of attention to detail, or maybe they think you're making things up as you go. I mean, none of these are messages you want to send to risk-averse government buyers. You don't need an expensive brand agency, though that can help, but you do need consistency. So make sure your colors, your fonts, your logo, they're all consistent. Use them everywhere. It's not rocket science, but it definitely matters.
It absolutely matters. Yeah. So let's get practical. What are the essentials every business needs when pursuing government contracts?
I love this question because this is where theory meets practice, right? You've got 5 essential tools that you absolutely must have. First and foremost, you need to have that capability statement. It's your one-page snapshot of who you are, what you do, why the government should work with you. You got to have your core competencies, your NAICS codes, again, which is the government's way of categorizing businesses, your certifications, your differentiators, your past performance, your contact information. Here's the critical part. You've got to tailor it for federal, state, and local audiences. So you're going to probably have 3 versions of it. Not completely different documents, just adapted slightly to emphasize what each audience is going to care about most.
And so what does tailoring look like in practice?
Well, your federal capability statement might lead with compliance credentials and federal experience. Your state version might emphasize that regional coverage and state-specific certifications. And then the local version, it might actually highlight community impact and local references. It's like having different outfits for different occasions. You own all these clothes. You're just selecting what's most appropriate for the context.
I feel like that was put in there for me. What is the next essential tool?
The second one is a company overview deck. This is basically a longer presentation version of your capability statement where you're really breaking things down. It's for those in-depth discussions with prime contractors when they're evaluating potential teaming partners, or when you're talking to, again, the government procurement officers. You're talking at the most 10 to 15 slides, but you need to cover your history, your qualifications, your processes, your detailed past performance, and your capacity to scale. It's all about, let me tell you more about us.
And what is the third tool that you would recommend?
Again, it's a professional website. I can't stress this enough. Your website is often the first substantial interaction that someone is going to have with your company. Needs to signal legitimacy, needs to signal federal readiness. Your website needs to clearly communicate what you do, who you serve, your relevant audience, your certifications, your NAICS codes, how to contact you. Again, doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to have all this animation and a movie playing in the background that's directed by Quentin Tarantino. Just think clean, professional, informative. Government buyers aren't looking for flashy; they're looking for competent and trustworthy. And please, 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 make sure your website is mobile responsive. You got to remember, it's 2025. This is not optional anymore. People are looking at your website on phones and tablets.
That's absolutely true. And what is our fourth tool?
Your fourth is the past performance project sheets. Again, one-page descriptions of your specific projects, including the client name, if you can share it, your project scope and objectives, your role and deliverables, the outcomes and net metrics, the timeline and budget, relevant challenges you overcame. The beauty of these is that they're modular. You can swap in and out information depending on the opportunity. If you're pursuing an IT contract, you can include your relevant IT project sheets. Construction, you use those instead. Again, you can mix and match.
That's a very comprehensive toolkit. Is there anything else that businesses should have or should consider having ready?
Yeah, I mean, the fifth one really is registrations. Okay. So again, if you're going after federal contracting, you need to make sure that you're registered on sam.gov, non-negotiable. If you're looking at the state level, you've got state vendor portals for the states you're targeting. For local, it might be local bidder lists. Registrations like that, they can take time, sometimes weeks, sometimes more, and they need to be kept current. It's not like you register and then you just leave it alone. Treat them like subscriptions that need renewal. Set calendar reminders for yourself, because an expired SAM registration, you could come across the most perfect opportunity for your company and then find out that your SAM registration expired and it disqualifies you, not just from that opportunity that you probably would have won, but from any other federal opportunities until you get it fixed. Then when you're talking about a few other things, right? Because again, we sort of talked about this a little bit. You've got a LinkedIn profile. You've got those case studies. You've got white papers. You've got video introductions to your company, right? Honestly, you start with the 5 ones that I mentioned. Get those right away before you're worried about the nice to haves. You make sure you have those, and it's like having plates and silverware before you buy the fancy napkin holders, because the priorities matter. Meg, I'm realizing that we're probably running out of time. We only got 2 minutes left. I don't think we're going to have time for Q&A today. Did we have any questions? Do we need to answer any? I can't see the Q&A panel. I don't know why I can't see the Q&A panel.
Okay. Could you go into a little more detail on the Mentor Protege program? Are there services with helping build a website and capability statement?
Okay, so Mentor Protege program, again, this is something you want to reach out to Move America for. So please, please, please visit our website, send us an email. You can contact us at communications@moveamerica.org. We'll make sure that we get you in touch with our Mentor Protege program people. They will tell you all about that. They are much more capable than I am. Are there services that will help you build a website and capability statement? Absolutely. Our Apex accelerators. They are excellent at doing that kind of stuff. They will definitely help you.
I don't see any others. And since our time is about to expire, should we close out the webinar today, and our contact information, communications@moveamerica.org, will be listed on the last slide. And you can, of course, send us an email and ask any questions that you weren't able to ask here today.
Yep, definitely. And so, just in closing, again, want to just give a quick recap, some of the key takeaways. Government contracting offers real opportunities at all levels, local, state, and federal, but you don't have to start at the top. Build yourself up strategically. Businesses need to position themselves as low risk and capable. Everything you communicate needs to reinforce trust, credibility, and confidence. Outreach is essential. Relationships are often what win over just having those registrations in place. So show up, be present, be helpful, build those genuine connections. Tailor your messaging for different audiences, keep your brand consistent, emphasize your different strengths without changing who you fundamentally are. And finally, have your tools ready, your capability statement, your company overview, your professional website, past performance, registrations. These are your foundation.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Our recording will be available on our website at moveamerica.org, along with the slides. We will also be sending a follow-up email with additional resources and links to the tools that we discussed today. Again, if you have questions that we didn't get to, feel free to give us a holler at either communications@moveamerica.org or connect with us on LinkedIn, and that's moveamerica-org. We are here to help. Rick, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and for making government contracting communications actually enjoyable.
Well, thank you. I did my best. Thanks for having me, Meg. Thanks to everyone who joined us. Remember, you've got this. Government contracting might seem really intimidating at first, and it is. But with the right approach and the right support, it's absolutely achievable. And remember, we are rooting for you.
Thank you.